The black car appeared on a Tuesday, sleek, silent, and parked exactly where innocence should have been safe. Elena Rivera's blood turned to ice the moment she saw him standing at the school gate. Adrian Volkov, the man she'd loved, the man she'd fled, the father her son had never known. 6 years of hiding, 6 years of carefully constructed lies, and now his eyes were locked on Noah, studying the tilt of his head, the shape of his smile, recognizing what she'd prayed he'd never see. Some secrets don't stay buried. Some men don't stay gone. And some mornings your entire world shatters before the first bell rings. If you want to see how far love will go to protect what matters most, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The alarm went off at 6:47 a.m., same as always. Elena Rivera's hand shot out from under the covers, silencing the insistent beeping before it could fully pierce the morning quiet. She lay there for exactly 30 seconds, a small luxury she allowed herself each day, staring at the ceiling of her modest apartment, mentally cataloging everything that needed to happen in the next hour and 13 minutes. Rise, shower, coffee, wake Noah, breakfast, backpack check, teeth, shoes, out the door by 8. The routine was sacred. The routine was survival. She pushed back the blankets and moved through the dim apartment with practiced efficiency, her bare feet silent on the worn hardwood floors. The radiator clanked to life as she passed, announcing the building's reluctant acknowledgement of another February morning. Outside her window, the city was still a watercolor of grays, pre-dawn shadows softening the hard edges of the neighborhood she'd called home for 6 years. 6 years of normal. 6 years of quiet. 6 years of being nobody to everyone. The shower was quick, the coffee strong and black. Elena stood at the kitchen counter in her bathrobe, hands wrapped around the chipped mug Noah had made her at summer camp, lopsided and painted with enthusiastic flowers that looked more like explosions. She loved it fiercely. "Mom?" His voice was small, still thick with sleep. Elena turned to find Noah standing in the doorway of his bedroom, dark hair sticking up in 5 different directions, his Spider-Man pajamas twisted from a night of restless sleep. At 6 years old, he was all elbows and knees and questions that came faster than she could answer them. "Morning, baby." She set down her coffee and crossed to him, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. He smelled like sleep and the lavender detergent she used on his sheets. "Ready for school?" Noah rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. "Do I have to go?" "Every day but Saturday and Sunday, you know the rules." "But Ms. Peterson said we're doing fractions today." He made it sound like a death sentence. Elena smiled, steering him toward the bathroom. "Fractions are useful. How else will you know if someone's giving you a fair share of pizza? I always want all the pizza." "Then you need fractions to negotiate for more than half." This seemed to satisfy him. Noah shuffled into the bathroom and Elena heard the water start running. She returned to the kitchen and began the familiar choreography of breakfast: cereal, milk, orange juice, the blue lunchbox pulled from the refrigerator where she'd packed it the night before. Routine, control, predictability. These were the pillars she'd built her life on after everything fell apart. By 7:45, they were ready. Noah wore his favorite hoodie, navy blue with a white stripe down the sleeves, and his backpack was slung over one shoulder, heavy with books and the lunchbox she'd insisted he take, even though he'd lobbied hard for cafeteria pizza. Elena had learned early that small battles saved energy for the wars that mattered. "Let's go, sweetheart." They stepped out into the February cold, Elena pulling her coat tighter as they descended the 3 flights of stairs from their apartment. The morning air bit at her cheeks, sharp and clean. Noah chattered beside her, something about a kid in his class who claimed he could skateboard with his eyes closed, and Elena made the appropriate encouraging and cautionary noises without fully processing the words. Her mind was already at work, the stack of invoices waiting on her desk, the meeting with her supervisor at 10, the grocery list she needed to tackle after pickup. Life in motion, always moving forward, never looking back. The walk to Riverside Elementary took exactly 7 minutes at Noah's pace. Elena had timed it 100 times, knew every crack in the sidewalk, every storefront they passed, the bakery on the corner where the owner always waved, the dry cleaner with the faded sign, the corner market run by the Korean family who kept late hours and never asked questions. Anonymous. Unremarkable. Safe. They were 2 blocks from the school when Noah's hand found hers. Mom? Yeah, baby? Tyler said his dad's taking him to see the new superhero movie this weekend. Noah's voice was careful, testing waters they'd navigated before. Do you think maybe we could go? Elena's chest tightened. We'll see. Maybe next weekend when I'm not working Saturday. But you're always working Saturday. Not always. Mostly always. He wasn't wrong. Elena squeezed his hand. Tell you what, we'll look at the calendar when we get home, find a day that works. Just you and me. Deal? Noah considered this, then nodded. Deal. But can we get the big popcorn? We'll see. That means no. That means we'll see. They turned the corner onto Riverside Avenue and the school came into view, a 2-story brick building that had probably been impressive in 1960, but now wore its age in peeling paint and patched asphalt. Still, it was clean and safe, the teachers were kind, and Noah had friends. That was enough. More than enough. The sidewalk outside the school was already filling with the morning rush, parents shepherding children, older kids arriving in clusters, teachers stationed at the doors with coffee cups and patient smiles. Elena felt the familiar loosening in her shoulders that came with this particular threshold. Another day, another successful delivery. They joined the stream of families moving toward the entrance. Noah was telling her something about library books when Elena noticed the car. It was parked across the street, sleek and black, and completely out of place in a neighborhood where most vehicles wore rust and dents like badges of honor. The windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal, and the engine was running. She could see the faint shimmer of exhaust in the cold air. Elena's steps slowed. She told herself it was nothing. A parent waiting, a driver killing time. The city was full of black cars. There was no reason for her pulse to kick up. No reason for the sudden electric awareness that made her skin prickle. But she'd learned years ago to trust her instincts, and her instincts were screaming. Mom? Noah tugged on her hand. You okay? Fine, baby, just... She forced herself to keep walking, keep moving toward the safety of the school entrance, but her eyes stayed locked on that car. Let's get you inside. They were 10 feet from the door when it happened. The rear door of the black car opened, and a man stepped out. Elena's world stopped. She knew him immediately, would have known him in the dark, in a crowd of thousands, after 100 years. The set of his shoulders, the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, like every gesture had been calculated 3 steps ahead. The sharp angles of his face that time hadn't softened. Adrian Volkov. He stood on the opposite sidewalk, hands in the pockets of an overcoat that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and looked directly at her. Number. Not at her. At Noah. The blood drained from Elena's face. Her hand tightened convulsively around her son's, hard enough that Noah made a small noise of protest. Mom, you're hurting. Inside. Her voice came out wrong, too sharp, too scared. Noah, inside right now. But I wanted to tell you about now. She practically dragged him toward the entrance, her heart slamming against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not after 6 years of silence, 6 years of carefully staying invisible. Behind her, she heard footsteps crossing the street. Elena's mind raced through impossible calculations. Run? Scream? Pretend she didn't see him? But Noah was already confused, already pulling against her grip, and causing a scene would only draw more attention. Besides, there was nowhere to run. Adrian Volkov didn't make mistakes, and he didn't show up places by accident. If he'd found them, he'd found them. They reached the door just as a familiar voice called out behind her. Elena! Not a question, not a plea, just her name, spoken in that voice she'd once loved more than breathing, now edged with something that made her stomach drop. She stopped. Couldn't help it. 6 years, and that voice still had hooks in her. Slowly, Elena turned. Adrian had reached the sidewalk. He was 10 feet away, close enough that she could see the gray at his temples that hadn't been there before. The new lines around his eyes. But the eyes themselves, those were exactly the same. Dark and sharp, and capable of reading her like she was written in his native language. It's been a long time, Adrian said quietly. Noah had gone still beside her, sensing the shift in the air even if he didn't understand it. Elena could feel his confusion radiating up through their joined hands. You have the wrong person. Her voice was steady. Years of practice. I don't know you. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation for the attempt. Don't do this. I said you have the wrong person. Elena took a half step back, positioning herself more firmly between Adrian and Noah. Please leave us alone, or I'll call the police. Elena, he said her name like it hurt. Look at me and tell me you really want to do this here. She did look at him then, really look, and the weight of everything they'd been to each other crashed over her like a wave. 7 years ago, she would have trusted this man with her life, had trusted him with her life more than once. Now she'd spent 6 years running from him. Mom? Noah's voice was small. Who is that man? The question hung in the cold air between them. Adrian's gaze dropped to Noah, and Elena watched his expression shift, watched him take in the details, the dark hair, the shape of the jaw, the way Noah stood with his weight on one foot, a mannerism that was pure unconscious mimicry. She saw the exact moment Adrian understood. His face went very still, the kind of still that preceded earthquakes. When he looked back at Elena, something blazed in his eyes that made her knees weak. How old is he? Adrian's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the morning noise like a blade. That's none of your business. How? Old? Elena lifted her chin. 6. She watched him do the math, saw the fury and wonder and devastation cycle through his expression in the space of a heartbeat. Adrian took a step forward, and Elena's free hand shot up instinctively. Don't! He stopped, but his eyes never left Noah. What's his name? We're leaving. Elena turned, tried to guide Noah toward the door, but her son had planted his feet. Noah, the boy said, looking up at the stranger with open curiosity. I'm Noah. Who are you? Adrian's expression cracked, just for a second, before he schooled it back into something more neutral. I'm nobody, Elena cut in desperately. He's nobody, sweetheart. Come on, you're going to be late. But Mom, Noah, please. The principal, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her pleasant expression shifting to concern as she took in the scene. Is everything all right here? Fine, Elena said quickly, too quickly. Just running late. Come on, Noah. This time she didn't give him a choice. She scooped him up. He was getting too big for this, but adrenaline made him weightless and carried him toward the door. Noah squirmed in her arms, craning his neck to look back at Adrian. But who was that? Nobody important. The lie tasted like ash. Just someone I used to know. Mrs. Chen held the door open, her eyes sharp with questions Elena absolutely could not answer. She deposited Noah just inside the entrance, kneeling to meet his confused gaze. Have a good day at school, okay? I love you. Love you too, but... She kissed his forehead and stood, nodding to Mrs. Chen. Thank you. I'll pick him up at 3. Elena didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked back down the steps, forcing her legs to move at a normal pace when everything in her screamed to run. Adrian hadn't moved from his position on the sidewalk, but his driver had materialized from somewhere, a mountain of a man in a dark suit who watched the scene with professional detachment. She walked past them without looking, heading back the way she'd come. Elena, stop. Go to hell, Adrian. We need to talk. We needed to talk 6 years ago. She kept walking, faster now. Now we need nothing. His hand caught her elbow, gentle but immovable. I know that's my son. Elena yanked her arm free and whirled on him, months and years of fear and fury finally finding their voice. You know nothing! He looks exactly like I did at that age. Adrian's voice was low, urgent. Same eyes, same everything. Don't insult both of us by denying it. He's not yours. The math doesn't lie, Elena. 6 years old. You disappeared 7 years ago without a word, without a trace. I tore this city apart looking for you. You should have looked harder at why I left. Something in her tone made him pause. Adrian studied her face, and she watched his anger slowly shift into something more complicated. Why did you leave? Because staying would have killed me. The words came out harder than she'd intended. Killed us. Both of us. I would have protected you. That's what I was afraid of. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing despite her coat. Your kind of protection comes with a body count, Adrian. I didn't want my child growing up in that world. So you just decided I had no right to know? The fury was back, hot and sharp. That I had no say? You made your choices a long time ago. Elena's voice cracked despite her best efforts. You chose that life. You chose that world. I chose differently for my son. Our son. No. She shook her head violently. Mine. I'm the one who carried him, who stayed up nights when he was sick, who held him when he had nightmares. I'm the one who's been there for every single moment of his life. You don't get to show up after 6 years and claim him. Adrian's jaw worked like he was physically restraining himself from saying something he couldn't take back. I would have been there, for all of it. If you'd given me the chance, I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk what? Me loving my own child? Couldn't risk him becoming leverage. The truth burst out of her like a confession. Couldn't risk some rival using him to hurt you, to control you. Couldn't risk raising him in a world where people he loved might disappear in the middle of the night and never come back. The words hung between them, heavy with old grief. Adrian's expression shifted, and for a moment she saw the man she'd fallen in love with. The one who existed underneath all the power and violence. The one who'd held her like she was something precious. That's not who I am anymore, he said quietly. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Men like you don't change, Adrian. They just get better at hiding what they are. You don't know what I know enough. She took a step back, needing distance. I know you need to leave. Stay away from me. Stay away from Noah. We don't exist to you anymore. We never did. Elena, I mean it. Her voice turned to steel. You show up again. I disappear. And this time you'll never find us. She turned and walked away, every muscle locked tight to keep from running. Behind her, she heard the driver say something in Russian, heard Adrian's sharp response, but neither of them followed. Elena made it 2 blocks before her legs gave out. She caught herself against a brick wall, breathing hard, her vision swimming with tears she refused to shed in public. Her phone was already in her hand, fingers shaking as she pulled up the contact she'd hoped never to use. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered, crisp and professional. Safe Passage Solutions, how can I help you? This is Sparrow. The code name felt ridiculous saying out loud, but protocol was protocol. I need immediate relocation assistance. A pause. Are you in immediate danger? Elena's voice caught. I don't know. Maybe. Someone from my past found me. Where are you now? 2 blocks from my son's school. We're not in danger right this second, but do you have somewhere safe you can go for the next few hours? Elena thought of her apartment, her job, the life she'd built. Yes. Go there. Stay off your normal patterns. I'll have someone contact you within 2 hours with next steps. The woman's voice softened slightly. You did the right thing calling, Sparrow. We'll take care of you. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, numb. 2 hours. She had 2 hours to figure out how to tell Noah they were leaving everything behind. Again. The bakery on the corner was just opening, the owner flipping the sign from closed to open. Elena went inside, bought a coffee she didn't want with hands that shook, and found a table by the window where she could see the street. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We should talk. Not a threat. A request. A V. She deleted it without responding. Another buzz, almost immediately. At least let me explain. You owe me that much. Elena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, I owe you nothing. Leave us alone. The response came back within seconds. I can't do that. Not now that I know. She was about to block the number when another message appeared. He has my eyes, Elena. Did you really think I wouldn't see it? Despite everything, Elena felt tears burn hot behind her eyes. Because he was right. Noah did have Adrian's eyes. That same sharp intelligence. That same way of looking at the world like he was solving a puzzle no one else could see. She'd known from the moment Noah was born that hiding him would be temporary at best. Had known that someday, somehow, the truth would find them. She just hadn't expected it to be today. Elena was drafting a response when movement outside the window caught her attention. A man across the street, leaning against a lamppost, watching the bakery. Watching her? Not one of Adrian's people. She knew his organization's type: expensive suits, military bearing, the kind of presence that announced itself. This man was different. Cheaper clothes, hungry eyes, the look of someone who got paid for results, not loyalty. Elena's blood turned to ice. She stood slowly, gathering her bag, trying not to show that she'd noticed. The man straightened, tracking her movement. When she headed toward the back of the bakery, he pushed off the lamppost and started across the street. The owner looked up from behind the counter as Elena approached. Restroom? Through the kitchen, first door on the left. Elena nodded, thanks, and pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. The space was cramped and hot. Two bakers working at a large table covered in flour. They looked up in surprise as she passed, but she was already moving toward the back exit. She hit the alley at a run. Behind her, she heard shouting, the bakery owner, the man pursuing. Elena didn't slow down. She knew these streets, had walked them 1,000 times with Noah. Knew which alleys connected, which dead-ended, where the cameras were. She cut left, then right, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Her phone was buzzing insistently in her pocket, but she didn't dare slow down to check it. The alley opened onto a side street. Elena burst into the open just as a car screeched to a halt in front of her. For one horrible second, she thought it was the man from the bakery, thought she'd run right into a trap. Then the passenger window rolled down, and Adrian's voice cut through her panic. Get in! Are you insane? There's someone following you. I saw him on the cameras. Adrian's expression was granite. Get in the car, Elena. Now. Behind her, she heard footsteps pounding closer. Elena's mind raced through impossible choices, landing on the least terrible option. She yanked open the door and threw herself into the back seat. The driver hit the gas before she'd even closed the door properly, the car surging forward with enough force to slam her back against the leather seat. Elena twisted to look out the rear window and saw the man from the bakery standing in the middle of the street, watching them disappear. Who was that? Adrian demanded. I don't know. Elena was shaking, adrenaline making her dizzy. I've never seen him before. But he was following you. Obviously. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something rapid fire, then turned in his seat to look at her properly. Are you hurt? I'm fine. You're bleeding. Elena looked down and realized she'd scraped her palm on the brick wall when she'd caught herself. Blood welled in a thin line across her palm, bright against her skin. It's nothing. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a white handkerchief, pressing it into her hand. The gesture was so familiar, it hurt. He'd always carried them, always been prepared for the small emergencies that found them. Some things didn't change. Where are we going? Elena asked, pressing the fabric against her palm. Somewhere safe while we figure out who that was. I told you to leave us alone. And I'm telling you that someone was tracking you who wasn't on my payroll. Adrian's voice hardened. Which means someone else knows about Noah. Someone else has questions. The implication hit Elena like a physical blow. No, that's impossible. I've been careful. So careful. Careful doesn't matter if someone's looking hard enough. Adrian exchanged a glance with his driver. Marcus, call Dimitri. I want a full workup on anyone who's been asking questions about Elena Rivera in the past 6 months. Check her building, her workplace, the school, everywhere. On it, boss. Elena's mind was spinning. This doesn't make sense. Nobody knows about my past. I changed my name, my whole identity. There's no paper trail connecting me to you. There's always a trail if you know where to look. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, typed a response. And if that man was waiting outside the bakery you just happened to stop at, he's been watching you for a while. The thought made Elena's skin crawl. How long have you been following me? Since last Tuesday. You... what? Adrian had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I had a credible tip that you were in the city. It took my people 3 days to confirm it was really you, and not just someone who looked similar. So you've been stalking me for a week. I've been trying to figure out the best way to approach you, Adrian corrected. But when I saw the boy this morning, his voice caught. I couldn't wait any longer. You had no right. I had every right. The fury was back, sharp and immediate. That's my son, Elena, my blood. You don't get to just erase me from his life because you decided I wasn't good enough. I decided he deserved better than growing up in a war zone. I would have changed for him. The shout filled the car, making even Marcus flinch. Elena stared at Adrian, seeing the raw wound of 6 years' worth of absence and anger laid bare. You don't change, she said quietly. Men like you don't change. You're wrong. Adrian's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. You have no idea what I've done to try to build something different, something clean. For 6 years, I've been working to legitimize every business, cut ties with every questionable connection, create something that could be... He trailed off, looking away. Something that could be worthy of you, if you ever came back. Elena felt something crack in her chest. Adrian? But you never were coming back, were you? He laughed, bitter and broken. You were just going to let me spend the rest of my life not knowing I had a son. I was protecting him. From me? His own father? From the world you live in, Elena's voice broke. From the people who would hurt him to hurt you. From growing up knowing his father's love came with a price tag made of blood and bullets. I'm not that person anymore. How can I believe that when you've been following me for a week? When you had your people tracking me down, that's exactly the kind of thing I was running from. Adrian opened his mouth to respond, but his phone buzzed again. This time when he looked at it, his expression went cold and flat in a way that made Elena's stomach drop. What? She demanded. Marcus? The school? Now! The driver's response was immediate. The car swung in a tight U-turn, tires squealing. Elena grabbed for the door handle to steady herself. What's happening? Adrian showed her his phone. It was a photo, grainy, clearly from a security camera, showing a man in a maintenance uniform standing outside Riverside Elementary. The timestamp was from 15 minutes ago. So? Elena said, not understanding. So that's not the regular maintenance company. Marcus confirmed it 2 minutes ago. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. Someone's inside the school asking questions about specific students. Guess which student they're most interested in. Elena's world tilted. Noah. We're 3 minutes out. I have people converging from 2 directions, but what? Adrian met her eyes, and she saw real fear there for the first time. But if they were willing to approach him at school, they're not planning to wait. The rest of the drive passed in a blur. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists to hide it. Every second felt like an hour, every red light like a personal attack. Who would do this? She whispered. Who even knows about him? I don't know yet. Adrian was on his phone, firing off instructions in rapid Russian. But we're going to find out. The school appeared ahead, still normal, still safe. Cars in the lot. Teachers at the windows. Nothing that looked remotely dangerous. Elena was out of the car before it had fully stopped, running toward the entrance with Adrian right behind her. The security guard, a friendly older man who usually waved Noah through, looked up in surprise as they burst into the lobby. Ma'am, is everything... Where's my son? Elena didn't slow down. Noah Rivera, 1st grade, Miss Peterson's class. The classrooms are still in session. I can't just... Where is he? Adrian stepped forward, and something about his presence made the guard's protest die in his throat. We need to see the principal, now. Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway, drawn by the commotion. Miss Rivera? What's going on? My son. I need to see my son right now. Is there some kind of emergency? Please? Elena's voice cracked. Just let me see him. 5 minutes. Mrs. Chen looked between Elena's desperate face and Adrian's cold authority, then nodded slowly. He's in the library with his class. Follow me. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Elena's heart was trying to pound its way out of her chest. Behind her, she heard Adrian speaking quietly into his phone, his words too low to make out. They turned the corner into the library, and Elena's knees nearly buckled with relief. Noah was there. Safe. Alive. Sitting cross-legged on the floor with 24 other 1st graders, listening to Ms. Peterson read from a picture book about dragons. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from confusion to delight. Mom, what are you doing here? Elena crossed to him, pulled him into her arms, and held on like she'd never let go. "Mom, you're squishing me," Noah said, but he hugged her back. Over his head, Elena met Adrian's eyes. He was standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression so complex she couldn't begin to parse it. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat gently. "Miss Rivera, perhaps we should talk in my office." Elena didn't want to let Noah go, but she forced herself to release him. "In a minute, baby. Mom just needed to check on something." "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine." The lie came automatically. "Go back to your story." Noah looked skeptical. Too smart for his own good, just like his father, but returned to his spot on the floor. Miss Peterson had paused in her reading, watching the scene with clear concern. In the hallway, Mrs. Chen's professional calm was starting to crack. "Would someone please tell me what's going on?" "Has anyone come to the school asking about Noah?" Adrian asked before Elena could respond. Who are you, exactly?" "Someone who needs to know if my son is in danger." The words came out flat and cold. Mrs. Chen's eyes went wide. "Your son? I was told Elena was—" "Single mother, yes," Elena cut in. "It's complicated. Please, has anyone been asking questions?" The principal hesitated, then nodded slowly. "A man came in about half an hour ago. Said he was from the district doing routine safety inspections. He asked to see our emergency contact files." "Did you show him?" "Of course not. Those are confidential. I asked for his credentials and he said he'd left them in his car. He left and didn't come back." Mrs. Chen wrapped her arms around herself. "Should I have been more worried?" "Yes," Adrian and Elena said in unison. Mrs. Chen went pale. "I need to call the police." "Already done," Adrian said, which was news to Elena but not surprising. "They're on their way. In the meantime, I need you to lock down the school. Nobody in or out without proper ID." "I can't just—" "Someone tried to access confidential information about a 6-year-old child under false pretenses. You can, and you will." Adrian's voice left no room for argument. "Unless you'd prefer to explain to the parents why you didn't take a potential threat seriously." Mrs. Chen looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she pulled out her phone and made a call. Within minutes, the school's intercom crackled to life with a calm announcement about an unexpected fire drill. Elena watched through the library window as teachers began shepherding students toward the exits in orderly lines. Noah appeared in the hallway holding hands with a little girl with pigtails, both of them chattering happily about missing fractions. When he saw Elena still there, his face lit up. "Mom! Are you staying for lunch?" "Maybe, baby." She managed a smile. "We'll see." Adrian's phone buzzed. He stepped away to take the call, his expression darkening with every second. When he returned, he pulled Elena aside out of Noah's earshot. They found the maintenance man's van 2 blocks away, empty, fake plates. "He's gone? Or he's watching to see what we do next?" Adrian's jaw was tight. "My people are sweeping the perimeter, but what?" "But this isn't random, Elena. Someone knows about Noah. Someone knows he's mine. And they're not just gathering information, they're moving." Elena felt like the ground was dissolving beneath her feet. "What do we do?" For a long moment, Adrian just looked at her. Then he said the words she'd been dreading for 6 years. "We stop running, and we figure out who's hunting our son." The police arrived within 12 minutes. 2 patrol cars that pulled up to the school with lights but no sirens, professional and calm in a way that suggested they'd been briefed on the severity before arrival. Elena watched from Mrs. Chen's office window as officers spread out across the grounds, checking perimeters, talking into radios clipped to their shoulders. Adrian stood beside her, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped Russian that she'd once found beautiful and now just found terrifying. Whatever he was hearing wasn't good. She could tell from the way his jaw kept tightening, the muscle jumping beneath the skin. "They're pulling security footage from every building in a 3-block radius," he said when he finally ended the call. "If this guy so much as breathed in the wrong direction, we'll have him." "And then what?" Elena's voice was hollow. "You're going to what? Interrogate him? Torture him until he tells you who sent him?" Adrian's expression didn't change. "If that's what it takes." "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid." She turned away from the window, unable to look at him. This is why I left. Because your solution to every problem is violence. My solution to people threatening my son is violence, yes. There was no apology in his tone. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. He's not your son. You don't get to claim him after one morning. Biology says different. Biology means nothing. Elena's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs to hide it. You think showing up and throwing around money and muscle makes you a father? He doesn't even know your name. Then tell him. No. Elena, I said no. She met his eyes, saw the fury there, matched it with her own. You want to help? Fine. Help me figure out who's after us so I can take Noah and disappear before this gets any worse. You're not disappearing. Watch me. Adrian moved faster than she expected, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He didn't touch her, but his presence alone was enough to make her back up against the desk. You had 6 years to run. That's over now. Someone knows about Noah, which means running won't keep him safe anymore. It'll just make him an easier target. So what's your brilliant plan? Surround him with armed guards, turn his life into a prison? If that's what it takes, yes. You're insane. I'm practical. Adrian's voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. You think I don't know what kind of life I live? You think I don't know what that means for anyone close to me? I've spent 6 years building walls between myself and that world, trying to create something clean enough that if you ever came back. He stopped, jaw working. But you never were coming back, so I kept building anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Elena felt something crack in her chest. Adrian, the office door opened and Mrs. Chen appeared with a uniformed officer. Detective Morris would like to speak with both of you. The detective was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and gray threading through her dark hair. She introduced herself with a firm handshake and the kind of assessing look that suggested she'd already formed several conclusions about the situation. I understand there's been a credible threat against your son, she said, pulling out a notebook. Can you walk me through what happened? Elena glanced at Adrian, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She took a breath and began with the man outside the bakery, the chase through the alley, stopping just short of explaining how she'd ended up in Adrian's car. Some details didn't need to be shared. Detective Morris wrote quickly, asking occasional clarifying questions. When Elena finished, the detective turned to Adrian. And you are? Adrian Volkov. I'm Noah's father. If the name meant anything to her, Morris didn't show it. Were you aware of the threat before this morning? I became aware my son existed this morning, Adrian said evenly. The threat assessment began immediately after. I see. Morris made a note. And you have private security conducting their own investigation? I have resources that can move faster than official channels, yes. Mr. Volkov, I need to be very clear about something. Morris closed her notebook and met his eyes directly. I understand you may have connections that allow for certain expedited information gathering, but if this becomes a criminal investigation, and it already is, I need your assurance that you'll cooperate with law enforcement and not take matters into your own hands. Adrian's smile was cold. I'll cooperate fully, Detective. You have my word. It was technically an agreement without being a promise, and Morris knew it. Her expression suggested she'd dealt with men like Adrian before and knew exactly how much his word was worth when his family was threatened. Ms. Rivera, the detective continued, is there anyone from your past who might have reason to target you or your son? An ex-partner, a stalker, anyone who's shown unusual interest? No. The lie came automatically. Nobody! Morris's eyes sharpened. You're sure? Because the man who tried to access school records wasn't a random opportunist. He had specific information about Noah's schedule and class placement. Elena felt Adrian's gaze burning into the side of her face. I can't think of anyone. What about Noah's father? Morris looked between them. Mr. Volkov, you said you only learned about your son today. Is it possible someone else has been watching Mrs. Rivera? Someone who might have discovered the connection between you and the boy? It's possible, Adrian said. I'm looking into it. Well, I'd like a list of anyone who might have that kind of information. I'll have it to you by end of day. Morris looked like she wanted to push back on that timeline, but her radio crackled with an update. She stepped away to take it, speaking in low tones that Elena couldn't quite make out. Adrian moved closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Who else knows? Knows what? Don't play games. Who else knows Noah is mine? Elena's mind raced. The agency that helped me relocate. That's it. Name. I'm not giving you that. Elena, if there's a leak, there's no leak. These people are professionals. They've been protecting women and children for 20 years. Then how did someone find you? I don't know. The words came out too loud. Elena lowered her voice. Maybe someone recognized me. Maybe I wasn't as careful as I thought, but it wasn't the agency. Adrian studied her face, then nodded slowly. Fine, but I'm vetting them anyway. You can't just watch me. Detective Morris returned before Elena could argue further. We're going to keep a patrol car in the area for the next few days. In the meantime, I need you both to be vigilant. Different routes to school, varied schedules, awareness of your surroundings. I want to pull him out, Elena said. Keep him home until we know it's safe. That might be wise for a day or two, Morris agreed. But long-term isolation isn't sustainable. Kids need routine, stability. They also need to be alive. Morris's expression softened slightly. I understand this is frightening, but we're going to do everything we can to keep your son safe. I promise you that. Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that the system would work, that the police could handle this. But she'd learned 6 years ago that sometimes the only person you could trust to keep you safe was yourself. The fire drill had ended, students filing back into the building under the watchful eyes of teachers and now police officers. Elena saw Noah in the crowd, still holding hands with the pigtailed girl, both of them more excited than scared about the unexpected break from class. I need to take him home, she said. Mrs. Chen nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. Adrian fell into step beside Elena as she headed toward the library. I'm coming with you. The hell you are. Someone just tried to get information about our son from his school. You really think I'm going to let you walk out of here alone? I've been keeping him safe for 6 years without your help. And look how well that worked out. Elena stopped so abruptly that Adrian nearly collided with her. She spun to face him, fury and fear and 6 years of carefully buried emotions rising up like a tidal wave. You want to blame me for this? Fine. Blame me. But I did what I thought was right. I protected him the only way I knew how. By keeping him from his father. By keeping him away from a war zone. Her voice cracked. You have no idea what it was like, Adrian. The threats, the anonymous calls, the messages that made it very clear what would happen to anyone close to you if they were discovered. So yes, I ran. And yes, I kept him from you, because I would rather have him alive and fatherless than dead, because someone wanted to hurt you through him. But Adrian's expression shifted, anger giving way to something more complicated. What threats? What messages? It doesn't matter now. The hell it doesn't. Elena, if someone was threatening you, it was 6 years ago. Different city, different life. Did you keep them? The messages? She hesitated. Some of them. I need to see them. Why? So you can track down people who probably don't even remember sending them? So you can start a war over ancient history. So I can figure out if whoever's threatening Noah now is the same person who threatened you then. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. Because if it is, then this isn't about business or territory or any of the usual bullshit. This is personal. The implication hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd assumed the threats 6 years ago were generic, the kind of thing anyone associated with Adrian Volkov would receive. But what if they weren't? What if someone had known even then that she was pregnant, that she was carrying Adrian's child? What if she'd been running from a specific enemy all along and just never knew it? Noah appeared in the hallway, his teacher walking beside him with his backpack and coat. His face lit up when he saw Elena, but the smile faltered when he noticed Adrian still there. Mom? What's happening? Ms. Peterson said I get to go home early. Elena forced brightness into her voice. That's right, baby. We're going to have a special day together. But it's Tuesday. You work on Tuesdays. Not today. Today, I'm all yours. Noah looked between Elena and Adrian, his 6-year-old brain clearly working to puzzle out the connection. Is he coming too? The question hung in the air. Elena opened her mouth to say no, but but Adrian spoke first. If that's okay with you. Noah considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Do you know my mom? I do. We're old friends. Oh. Another long pause. Do you like pizza? Despite everything, Elena felt a hysterical laugh building in her chest. Of all the questions Noah could have asked, of all the ways this conversation could have gone, he'd landed on pizza. Adrian's expression softened in a way Elena had rarely seen. I love pizza. Then I guess you can come. Noah turned to Elena for confirmation. Right, Mom? What could she say? That the stranger was actually his father? That she'd spent 6 years lying about his existence? That people were hunting them and she had no idea why? Right, she heard herself say. He can come. They walked to her apartment in a strange procession. Elena holding Noah's hand, Adrian flanking them like a bodyguard, his driver Marcus following at a discreet distance in the black car. Other pedestrians gave them a wide berth, sensing something dangerous in the configuration, even if they couldn't name what. Noah chattered the whole way, telling Adrian about fractions and the Dragon Book and how Tyler's dad was taking him to see a superhero movie, but Mom said maybe next weekend. Adrian listened with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every word, every inflection. What do you do? Noah asked suddenly. For work, I mean. Adrian hesitated. I help businesses run smoothly. Like a manager? Something like that. My mom does numbers for a company. She says it's boring but important. Your mom is very smart. Noah nodded seriously. The smartest. She helps me with homework even when it's hard. Elena felt Adrian's eyes on her but didn't look at him. Couldn't look at him. Because if she did, she'd see all the years he'd missed reflected in his face, and that would make everything so much harder. They reached her apartment building, a 5-story walk-up that had probably been nice in 1950 and now just barely qualified as maintained. The front door stuck, the hallway smelled like someone's questionable cooking, and the stairs creaked ominously under their feet. Elena watched Adrian take it all in and felt defensive anger rise in her throat. So it wasn't a penthouse. So the paint was peeling and the radiator clanked. It was clean and safe and hers. 3rd floor, she said curtly. They climbed in silence. Noah had finally stopped chattering, his energy flagging now that the excitement of an early dismissal was wearing off. By the time they reached her apartment, he was yawning. Elena unlocked the door and ushered them inside. The space was small but tidy. A living room that flowed into a kitchen, 1 bedroom for her, and a smaller one for Noah. A bathroom that had seen better decades. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but every inch of it had been chosen with care. Photos covered the refrigerator, Noah's artwork, his school picture from September, a snapshot of them at the beach last summer. Evidence of a life fully lived, even if it had been built on lies. Adrian stopped in front of the refrigerator, studying the photos with an expression Elena couldn't read. I'm hungry, Noah announced, oblivious to the tension. Can I have a snack? Apple slices and peanut butter, Elena said automatically. Can I have cookies? After dinner. But apple slices, Noah. He sighed dramatically, but climbed onto a kitchen stool to watch her prepare the snack. Adrian stood awkwardly in the doorway, too large for the small space, clearly unsure what to do with himself. You can sit, Elena said without looking at him. He took the chair at the small dining table, his presence filling the room in a way that made it hard to breathe. Marcus had remained outside, stationed in the hallway or downstairs. Elena wasn't sure which. She set the plate of apple slices in front of Noah and poured him a glass of milk. The routine of it was soothing, familiar, normal in a morning that had been anything but. Mom? Noah's voice was small. Why did we leave school early? Really? Elena's hand stilled on the milk carton. There was just some confusion about schedules. Nothing to worry about. But the police were there. The police were just checking on something. It's fine. Noah looked at her with those 2 intelligent eyes, Adrian's eyes, and she knew he didn't believe her. But he was 6, and 6-year-olds eventually accepted the limits of what adults would tell them. Okay, he said, returning his attention to the apple slices. Elena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out and saw a message from the Safe Passage contact. We need to talk, not on the phone. Can you meet in 1 hour? She typed back. Complicated situation. Can't leave right now. The response came immediately. Then we come to you. Send address. Elena hesitated, looking at Noah happily eating his snack, at Adrian watching them both with an expression of such profound loss it made her chest ache. Sending her address would mean letting the agency know where she lived, breaking one of their cardinal rules about keeping safe houses separate from active identities. But she was out of options. She sent the address. Adrian was watching her. What is it? Someone's coming to talk to me. Who? The people who helped me disappear. She met his eyes directly. They're going to want me to run again. You're not running. That's not your decision. Elena, you don't get to make choices about our lives, Adrian. You lost that right when you chose your world over everything else. The words hit him like bullets. She watched him absorb the impact, saw something shatter behind his eyes. I never chose anything over you, he said quietly. I thought I was building something we could share, something better than what I came from. You built an empire on blood. I built an empire so I'd never be powerless again. His voice was raw, so I could protect the people I loved, so no one could take from me what was taken from my family. Elena wanted to argue, to maintain the wall she'd built between them, but she'd heard the stories of Adrian's childhood, the poverty, the violence, the way his father had been murdered over a gambling debt when Adrian was 12. She'd seen the scars, literal and figurative, that those years had left. Understanding didn't mean forgiving, but it made the anger harder to hold. Noah had finished his snack and was looking between them with growing confusion. Are you guys fighting? No, baby, Elena said quickly. Just talking about grown-up things. It sounds like fighting. Sometimes grown-ups talk loudly about important stuff. It doesn't mean we're mad. Noah didn't look convinced, but he slid off the stool. Can I watch TV? Half an hour, then homework. He raced to the living room and turned on the television, the sounds of a cartoon filling the small space. Elena watched him settle on the couch, his whole body relaxing into the familiar routine. He's beautiful, Adrian said softly. I know. He has your smile, and your stubbornness. Does he know? Adrian's voice caught. Does he ever ask about his father? Elena felt like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. Sometimes. What do you tell him? That his father had to go away? That it wasn't Noah's fault? That he was loved very much, even if his father couldn't be here? Adrian's hands clenched on the table. You told him I was dead. I told him you were gone. He made his own assumptions. Elena, what did you want me to say? Her voice broke despite her best efforts. That his father was alive but too dangerous to be around? That I ran because I was terrified someone would kill our baby to hurt you? How do you explain that to a child? You could have trusted me to protect you both. I did trust you. That's why I left. She turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I trusted that you loved me enough to become the kind of man who would burn the world down to keep us safe. And I couldn't let Noah grow up in the ashes. The silence that followed was broken by a knock at the door. Elena's head snapped up. Too soon for the safe passage contact. Too quiet for the police. Adrian was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between the door and Noah. His hand moved to his waistband, checking for a weapon Elena very much hoped wasn't there. Another knock, louder this time. Ms. Rivera? A woman's voice, professional and calm. It's Detective Morris. I have some follow-up questions. Elena exhaled and moved to open the door. Morris stood in the hallway with another officer, her expression grave. Can we come in? Of course. The detective entered, nodding to Adrian with barely concealed wariness. Her partner remained in the doorway, hand resting casually near his service weapon. We've reviewed the security footage from the school and surrounding area, Morris said. I need you to look at something. She pulled out a tablet and brought up a video file. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The man in the maintenance uniform approaching the school, checking his phone, looking directly at the camera. But it was the next clip that made Elena's blood freeze. Same man, different location. Standing outside her apartment building, looking up at the third floor, checking his phone again. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. He's been watching you, Morris said quietly. This wasn't opportunistic. Someone hired him to gather intelligence, and he's been surveilling both you and your son for at least the past week. Adrian leaned in, studying the footage with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every pixel. Can you enhance the image? We're working on it, but I wanted you to see this, Ms. Rivera, because it changes the threat assessment. Morris's expression was grave. This isn't random. Someone is specifically targeting your family. And until we know who and why, you need to consider Noah at serious risk. Elena felt the room tilt. She reached for the counter to steady herself, and Adrian's hand was suddenly there, supporting her elbow. What do we do? She whispered. We keep you safe, Morris said. I can arrange for protective custody if... No! Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. They're coming with me. Mr. Volkov, I understand you want to help, but I have resources you don't. Security you can't provide. And unlike the state, I have a personal stake in keeping them alive. His eyes were cold and flat. They're coming with me. Today. Now. Morris looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Adrian's expression stopped her. I need to know where they'll be. For the investigation. You'll have a contact number, that's all. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. Adrian's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. Because whoever is hunting my son has already proven they can find him once. I'm not giving them a second chance. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some control over the situation, but the fear was overwhelming, drowning out everything else. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay. Both Morris and Adrian turned to look at her in surprise. We'll go with you, Elena continued, the words tasting like surrender. But I need to pack, and I need to talk to Noah. Adrian nodded. You have 15 minutes. 15 minutes felt like 15 seconds. Elena moved through her apartment in a daze, pulling clothes from drawers and stuffing them into the duffel bag she kept in the back of her closet, the one she'd sworn she'd never need again. Noah's favorite stuffed bear, his Spider-Man pajamas, the blue hoodie he wore until it needed washing, toothbrushes, the medication she kept for his occasional ear infections. She moved on autopilot, her hands knowing what to grab even as her mind struggled to process what was happening. In the living room, Noah was still watching cartoons, oblivious to the adults moving around him with grim efficiency. Adrian had positioned himself by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Russian. Detective Morris stood near the door with her partner, watching everything with the careful attention of someone documenting details for a report. Elena's own phone buzzed. The safe passage contact. Outside your building. Can't come up. Police presence. What's happening? She typed quickly. Situation escalated. Going to safe location. Will contact when secure. With who? Elena, we need to know you're making the right choice. Elena looked at Adrian, at the rigid set of his shoulders, at the way his eyes constantly scanned the street below. She thought about the man who'd been watching her apartment for 3 days, about Noah's name being asked for at school, about how small and vulnerable her son looked curled up on that worn couch. With someone who has resources I don't. I'll be in touch. She silenced her phone before the response could come through. The bag was packed. Elena did a final sweep of the bathroom, grabbing the essentials she'd missed. When she returned to the living room, Adrian had ended his call and was watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. Ready? He asked. No. She set down the bag. But I need to talk to Noah first. Make it quick. Elena crossed to the couch and sat down beside her son. On the television, brightly colored characters were solving some problem with the power of friendship. She wished real life worked that way. Hey baby, I need to talk to you about something. Noah looked up, immediately reading the seriousness in her tone. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, but we need to go stay somewhere else for a little while. His eyes went wide. Are we moving again? The question hit her like a punch. He remembered. Of course he remembered. He'd been 4 when they'd relocated from the last city, old enough to notice the upheaval even if he hadn't understood the reasons. Not moving, Elena said carefully. Just staying somewhere safe while Mom figures some things out. Safe from what? She'd never lied to Noah about the big things. Had always believed he deserved truth even when the truth was scary. But how did you explain to a 6-year-old that someone was hunting him for reasons he couldn't possibly understand? There are some people who might want to bother us, she said slowly. And I want to make sure they can't. So we're going to stay with Adrian for a bit. Noah glanced at Adrian, who had moved closer. The pizza guy? Despite everything, Elena felt a laugh bubble up. Yeah, the pizza guy. Is he your boyfriend? No, baby, She looked at Adrian, saw him waiting for her answer with an intensity that suggested everything hinged on what she said next. He's someone very important, someone who cares about us and wants to help keep us safe. Noah considered this with his characteristic seriousness. For how long? I don't know yet. Maybe a few days, maybe a little longer. But what about school? You'll have some time off. And my friends? You'll see them again soon. I promise. Noah's lower lip trembled and Elena's heart cracked. I don't want to go. I like it here. I know you do, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to because they keep us safe. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. And I promise, no matter where we go or how long we're gone, we're together, always. She felt Noah nod against her shoulder. When she released him, his eyes were shiny, but he wasn't crying. Brave boy. Her brave, strong boy who'd already been asked to adapt to more than any child should have to. Okay, Noah said quietly. But can I bring Mr. Bear? Already packed. And my books? Grab 3. That's all we have room for. Noah scrambled to his room and Elena heard him debating with himself about which books made the cut. She stood, wiping her own eyes before anyone could see, and found Adrian watching her with something like awe. You're good with him, he said quietly. I've had practice. Elena, don't. She held up a hand. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. Not right now. He nodded, accepting the boundary, even though she could see it cost him. Noah returned with his books, 2 chapter books about dragons and 1 picture book he'd long since memorized but refused to part with. Elena tucked them into the duffel bag and zipped it closed. Detective Morris stepped forward. I'll need contact information, and I'll want to check in daily. Adrian rattled off a phone number. That line is secure and monitored. Any communication goes through it. Morris didn't look happy, but she wrote it down. Ms. Rivera, I need you to understand something. By leaving with Mr. Volkov, you're making yourself harder to protect through official channels. If something happens, nothing's going to happen, Adrian interrupted. I guarantee it. You can't guarantee anything in a situation like this. Watch me. The 2 locked eyes, and Elena saw the detective weighing her options. Finally, Morris pulled out a business card and pressed it into Elena's hand. You call me if you need anything, day or night, and I mean anything. She lowered her voice. Including if you change your mind about this arrangement. Elena nodded, pocketing the card. Morris gave Adrian one last warning look before heading for the door, her partner following. The apartment felt suddenly too quiet. Marcus is bringing the car around back, Adrian said. There's a service entrance that'll let us avoid the front street. You already scoped out my building? I scoped it out a week ago. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Standard security protocol. Right, standard. Elena shouldered the duffel bag, then held out her hand to Noah. Ready, baby? He took her hand but looked uncertainly at Adrian. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Adrian said, crouching down to Noah's eye level. Somewhere with good locks and people whose job is to make sure nobody bothers you. Like bodyguards? Exactly like bodyguards. Noah's eyes lit up with the first real excitement she'd seen since this nightmare began. Cool. They took the back stairs, Elena leading the way through the dim stairwell that smelled like mildew and someone's cooking. Adrian followed close behind, his presence a solid wall between them and any threat that might emerge from the shadows. The service entrance opened onto an alley where Marcus waited with the black car, engine running. He popped the trunk without a word, and Adrian deposited their bag before opening the rear door. After you. Elena climbed in, pulling Noah onto her lap, even though he was really too big for it now. She needed to feel the solid weight of him, needed the reassurance that he was here and whole and safe. Adrian slid in beside them, and Marcus pulled away from the curb with the smooth efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Noah pressed his face to the window, watching the familiar streets of their neighborhood slip past. Mom, are we coming back? The question hung in the air. Elena looked at Adrian, saw her own uncertainty reflected in his expression. I don't know, baby. Maybe. But what about all our stuff? We'll figure it out. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, heading toward a part of the city Elena rarely visited, where the buildings got taller and shinier, where doormen stood guard and security cameras tracked every angle. Old money and new power, all wrapped up in glass and steel. Marcus pulled into an underground garage beneath a high-rise that probably had its own zip code. The security gate rolled closed behind them with a finality that made Elena's stomach clench. They took a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. Noah watched the floor numbers climb with wide eyes, counting under his breath. 12, 20, 35, 40. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took up the entire top floor. Elena stepped out and felt her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the late afternoon sun painting everything in shades of gold. The space was massive, modern furniture, art that probably cost more than she'd make in a decade, finishes that screamed quiet wealth. This was Adrian's world, the world she'd fled from, the world she'd sworn Noah would never be part of. "Mom, this is huge," Noah whispered, awed despite himself. "It's temporary," Elena said firmly, more to herself than to him. Adrian moved past them, speaking into his phone again. Two men appeared from a hallway. More security, Elena assumed, based on their build and the way they positioned themselves near the exits. "Dimitri, Victor," Adrian said by way of introduction. "They'll be handling security detail. Anything you need, you ask them." The men nodded politely but didn't speak. Elena felt their eyes cataloging her and Noah, making assessments, filing away information for future reference. "There are 3 bedrooms," Adrian continued. "You and Noah can have the master. I'll take one of the guest rooms." "We don't need the master." "Yes, you do. It has an attached bathroom and a door that locks from the inside." His tone left no room for argument. "Non-negotiable." Elena wanted to fight about it, but Noah was already exploring, his small feet making soft sounds on the hardwood floors. She followed him, keeping him in sight as he investigated this strange new environment. The master bedroom was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, covered in bedding that probably had a thread count higher than her credit score. The bathroom had a soaking tub and a shower with jets that suggested someone had strong opinions about water pressure. Noah found the window seat and climbed onto it, pressing his hands against the glass. "Mom, look! You can see everything!" She joined him, and he wasn't wrong. The city spread out below them like a living map, cars like toys, people like ants. From up here, the danger felt distant, abstract. But Elena knew better than to trust distance. Adrian appeared in the doorway. "I need to make some calls. Will you be all right for an hour?" "We're fine. There's food in the kitchen. Dimitri can help you find anything you need." "Adrian." She waited until he looked at her. "What happens next?" "Next, I figure out who's threatening my son, and I make sure they never threaten anyone again." The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it was almost comforting, because whatever else Adrian Volkov was, he was a man who kept his promises, especially the violent ones. He left, and Elena heard him speaking rapid-fire Russian in the hallway. Orders being given, plans being made, the machinery of his empire grinding into motion. "Mom?" Noah had abandoned the window seat and was now investigating the massive television mounted on the wall. "Can I watch cartoons?" "Sure, baby. Keep the volume low." She helped him find a channel he liked, then retreated to the window while he settled in. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and terrible, like everything else about this day. Her phone buzzed. The safe passage contact again. "You need to reconsider. Going with him is dangerous." Elena stared at the message, then typed back. "More dangerous than staying visible? Volkov has enemies, you know this. Being under his protection makes you a target. I'm already a target. At least this way I have resources. Resources come with strings. You know what he is." Elena's fingers trembled as she typed her response. "He's Noah's father. That has to count for something." The reply took longer this time. Love doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes it means the opposite. She turned off her phone. In the living room, Adrian was still making calls, his voice carrying through the open space. She caught fragments, names she didn't recognize, places that might have been cities or might have been code, instructions that sounded like chess moves, positioning pieces for a game she only half understood. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted by the day's chaos. Elena watched the rise and fall of his chest, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the absolute trust in his sleeping face. He looked so much like Adrian it hurt. "The building is secure," Adrian's voice came from behind her. "4 men on rotation, cameras on every floor, and I've got people watching the street. Nobody gets close without us knowing." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to keep you alive." He moved to stand beside her, both of them watching Noah sleep. "He's exhausted. It's been a long day. Elena, I need to know, the threats you received 6 years ago, do you still have them?" She nodded slowly. "I kept everything, just in case." "Where?" "Storage unit across town. I couldn't keep them in the apartment, didn't want Noah to ever find them by accident. I need to see them." "Why? What difference does it make now?" Adrian turned to face her fully. "Because if whoever sent them is the same person who's after Noah now, then this isn't random. It's someone who's been waiting, watching, planning. And that means they're patient, organized, dangerous in ways that require a different approach." "Different how?" "Different like this isn't about intimidation or leverage. This is about revenge." The words settled between them like a stone. "Revenge for what?" Elena whispered. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." His expression was granite. "Can you get me into the storage unit?" "Not without raising flags. The agency monitors access. If I show up after years of not touching it, they'll know something's wrong. Then I'll send someone." "Adrian, if they catch wind that you're involved, they already know I'm involved. You went with me, remember? Your safe passage contact has probably already flagged you as compromised." The casual way he said it made her stomach drop. "How do you know about safe passage?" "Because I make it my business to know about every organization that helps people disappear, in case I ever needed to find someone." He didn't apologize for the admission. "Give me the address and the access code. I'll have the materials retrieved within 4 hours." Elena wanted to argue, to maintain some control over information she'd guarded for 6 years, but the surveillance footage of the man watching her apartment played on repeat in her mind. 3 days. He'd been watching them for 3 days, and she'd never noticed. She gave him the address. Adrian made a call, rattled off instructions in English this time for her benefit. When he hung up, he looked at Noah again. "Does he have nightmares?" The question caught her off guard. "Sometimes. Not often." "About what?" "The usual 6-year-old stuff. Monsters under the bed, getting lost. Sometimes he dreams about his father." She saw Adrian flinch. "He asks what you looked like, if you like the same things he likes, if you would have taught him to ride a bike." "What do you tell him?" "That you would have loved him more than anything in the world." Her voice cracked. "That the only reason you weren't there was because you couldn't be, not because you didn't want to be." Adrian's jaw worked. "You could have told him the truth." "He's 6, Adrian. The truth is that I ran because anonymous threats made it clear that loving you came with a death sentence. How do you explain that without destroying a child's sense of security?" "You tell him his father would have died to protect him." "That's exactly what I was afraid of." Elena turned away from the window, unable to look at either Adrian or Noah anymore. "I didn't want him growing up knowing his father died for him. That kind of weight destroys people. So instead, he grows up thinking he wasn't wanted. He knows he's wanted by me. That's enough." "It's not enough. It's never been enough." Adrian moved closer, and Elena could feel the heat of him, the familiar pull that 6 years of distance hadn't diminished. "You think you protected him by keeping us apart, but all you did was deprive him of half his family, half his history. I gave him a normal life. You gave him a partial life, and now someone's threatening even that." His voice dropped. "Tell me, Elena, was it worth it? All the running, all the lies? Are you safer now than you would have been if you'd stayed and let me protect you?" The question was a knife between her ribs. Because he was right, wasn't he? She'd spent 6 years looking over her shoulder, building a life on false names and forged documents, teaching Noah to be ready to run at a moment's notice. And in the end, someone had found them anyway. "I did what I thought was right," she said finally. "I know." The anger drained from Adrian's voice, leaving only exhaustion. "I know you did, but we're past that now. Someone knows about Noah, which means someone's been digging into my past, our past, And they're not just looking for leverage. They had 3 days to grab him from that school if that's all they wanted. This is about something else. Like what? Like making sure I know they can reach him. Like making me sweat. Like positioning pieces before they make their real move. He pulled out his phone, showing her a series of photos. These are screenshots from the surveillance footage. Different angles of the same man. Notice anything? Elena studied the images. The man in the maintenance uniform looked unremarkable. Average height, average build, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. Then she noticed the tattoo. It was small, barely visible in the crook of his elbow where his sleeve had ridden up, some kind of symbol she didn't recognize. "What is that?" she asked. "Old Eastern European organized crime marker, hasn't been used in active circulation in 15 years. Adrian zoomed in on the image. Which means either this guy's legacy from an old guard family or someone very deliberately hired someone with those specific connections. Why would that matter? Because 15 years ago was when I was building my operation, when I was taking territory from established families, when I made a lot of enemies who swore they'd make me pay. His expression was dark. I thought most of them were dead or in prison. Apparently I was wrong. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. You think this is someone from back then? Someone with a grudge? I think someone's been waiting a very long time for the perfect revenge, and discovering I have a son gives them exactly the weapon they need. The implications crashed over her like a wave. Then we can't stay here. If they know about Noah, they know about you, which means they'll know about this place. This place is a fortress. 24-hour security, reinforced structure, multiple escape routes. They know I'm here, but they can't get to us. Adrian's confidence was absolute. What they can do is wait, watch, look for any moment when we're vulnerable. So we're prisoners. You're safe. There's a difference. Not to a 6-year-old there isn't. Elena gestured toward Noah, still sleeping peacefully. How long do you expect him to stay locked up in here? A week? A month? He has school, friends, a life. He has a target on his back, Adrian cut in. Everything else is secondary. You can't just decide that. I can and I am. Until I neutralize this threat, you both stay here where I can protect you. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the loss of autonomy, the sudden confinement, but the memory of that surveillance footage kept playing in her mind. The man watching her building, asking about Noah at school, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She looked at her sleeping son and felt the fight drain out of her. How long will it take? She asked quietly. To neutralize the threat? However long it takes. Adrian's voice was steel. But I promise you this, whoever is hunting our son will regret the day they decided he was an acceptable target. The sun had fully set now, the city lights creating a galaxy below them. Elena watched the traffic flow, people moving through their normal lives, completely unaware of the drama playing out 40 stories above them. Dmitri appeared in the doorway. Sir, the package from the storage unit has arrived. Adrian straightened. Bring it to my office. Should I? Dmitri glanced at Elena. She comes too. Adrian looked at her. You should see this. You need to understand what we're dealing with. Elena didn't want to leave Noah, but the couch was visible from Adrian's office, and Dmitri positioned himself where he could watch both spaces. She followed Adrian down a hallway lined with art she didn't have the education to appreciate. His office was exactly what she'd expected. Massive desk, leather chairs, windows that offered a view that probably cost $1 million per square foot. A sealed box sat on the desk, labeled with a storage company logo. Adrian opened it carefully, pulling out the contents Elena had hidden away 6 years ago. Printed emails, screenshots of text messages, a thumb drive containing voicemails she'd been too afraid to delete. He spread them across the desk methodically, reading each one with the careful attention of someone analyzing evidence. Elena watched him work, her stomach churning with remembered fear. She didn't need to read them again. Every word was burned into her memory. Your child will pay for his father's sins. Every child of the Volkov line will know suffering. You think you can hide? We will find you. We will find what you love most, and we will make him scream. Adrian's hand stilled on one particular message. His expression went very, very still. What? Elena asked. He turned the paper toward her. It was a photo she'd forgotten was in the collection, a grainy image of her walking down a street taken from a distance. 6 months pregnant, hand on her belly, completely unaware she was being photographed. Written across the bottom in red ink. Soon. They knew, Adrian said quietly. Even before Noah was born, they knew you were carrying my child. How's that possible? We were careful. I didn't tell anyone. Someone was watching us, watching you. His voice was dangerously calm. And they've been patient, so patient, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. Elena felt her legs go weak. She grabbed the edge of the desk for support. Then running didn't matter. They would have found us eventually anyway. Running bought you 6 years. 6 years where Noah got to be a normal kid, where he wasn't constantly looking over his shoulder. Adrian looked up at her, and the rage in his eyes was terrible to see. But you're right. This was always going to catch up to us. And now it has. He gathered the papers, photographing each one with his phone before carefully replacing them in the box. When he was done, he made a call. Victor, I need you to run these images and messages through our network. Every contact, every analyzer, every hacker we have on payroll. I want to know who sent them, where they came from, and what organization they're connected to. He paused. And Victor, this is priority 1. Everything else stops until we have answers. He ended the call and looked at Elena. Go be with Noah. I have work to do. Adrian, please. The single word carried the weight of 6 years of absence, of a threat neither of them fully understood yet. Let me do this. Let me protect him the way I should have been able to protect you both from the beginning. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, her control over their lives. But the truth was, she was terrified. More terrified than she'd been even 6 years ago, because now it wasn't just abstract threats. It was a man who'd been watching her apartment, who tried to access Noah's school records, who was working for someone patient enough to wait years for revenge. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She left him in his office, surrounded by evidence of threats she'd tried to outrun, and returned to the living room where Noah still slept. She gathered him carefully, carrying him to the master bedroom. He stirred slightly as she tucked him into the massive bed, but didn't wake. Elena sat beside him, watching him sleep, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. Every choice she'd made for 6 years had been about keeping him safe. And somehow, she'd ended up right back where she'd started, relying on Adrian Volkov's protection, trusting a man whose world was built on violence to keep their son alive. Outside the window, the city glittered with possibility and danger in equal measure. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, waiting, planning their next move in a game Elena didn't know how to play. But Adrian did, and that would have to be enough. Elena woke to the sound of raised voices. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, the ceiling too high, the light coming through the windows all wrong. Then memory crashed back. The penthouse. Adrian. The threats. Noah was still asleep beside her, one arm flung over Mr. Bear, his breathing deep and even. Elena slipped out of bed carefully, pulling on the robe she'd found hanging in the bathroom, and moved toward the door. The voices were coming from Adrian's office. She recognized his tone, cold, controlled fury that suggested whoever was on the other end of the conversation was about to have a very bad day. I don't care what it costs, Adrian was saying. I want names. I want locations. I want every person who's had contact with this organization in the past 15 years mapped and tracked. Elena hesitated in the hallway. She shouldn't eavesdrop, should go back to bed, let Adrian handle whatever crisis had erupted in the middle of the night. But this was about Noah, which meant it was her business too. She moved closer, keeping to the shadows. Through the partially open door, she could see Adrian pacing behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Victor stood near the window, arms crossed, his expression grim. No, Dmitri, I don't think you're understanding me. Adrian's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. Someone threatened my son. Someone photographed the mother of my child while she was pregnant and has been waiting 6 years to make their move. I don't want probable connections. I want certainties. And I want them yesterday. He listened for a moment, then made a sharp gesture. Then bring in external resources. Call Sergei in Moscow. Call Chan in Hong Kong. Call every contact we have with access to old Eastern European crime databases. Someone knows who uses that tattoo signature, and I want that information before sunrise. Another pause. Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't care if it starts a war, Dimitri. It's already started. They started it the moment they went after my family. He ended the call and threw the phone onto the desk with enough force that Elena was surprised it didn't shatter. Victor spoke, his accent thick. Boss, maybe we should consider what? Backing down? Showing weakness? Adrian's laugh was harsh. That's exactly what they want. They want me scared, reactive, making mistakes. They want you visible. If you move too hard, too fast, you expose Elena and the boy. They're already exposed. Someone's been watching them for weeks, maybe months. We're past the point of hiding. Elena must have made some sound because both men's heads snapped toward the door. Adrian's expression shifted from fury to something more carefully controlled. Elena, you should be sleeping. Hard to sleep when World War III is being planned in the next room. She stepped into the office fully, tying the robe tighter. What's happening? Adrian exchanged a look with Victor, who took it as his cue to leave. The big man nodded to Elena as he passed, closing the door behind him. We got a hit on the tattoo, Adrian said. The organization it's connected to. Elena's stomach dropped. And? And it's worse than I thought. He moved to the desk, pulling up an image on his computer. This is the Konstantin Bratva. They operated out of Brooklyn 15 years ago. Drugs, weapons, protection rackets. I took over most of their territory when I was building my operation. Took over how? How do you think? Adrian's tone was flat. I made them an offer. They refused. I made them a better offer involving significantly less diplomacy. You mean you went to war with them? It wasn't much of a war. They were old guard, set in their ways, too arrogant to see the changing landscape. I had youth and ambition and better connections. It was over in 6 months. Elena stared at the image on the screen, some kind of organizational chart with names and photos, most of them crossed out or marked as deceased. What happened to the leadership? Dead in prison or scattered? Adrian pointed to one name at the top. Except for this one, Mikhail Konstantin, the heir apparent. He was 22 when I took down his father's organization. Smart, ruthless, but too young to hold the territory. He disappeared after the final confrontation. Disappeared where? Eastern Europe, we thought. Rebuilding somewhere safer, somewhere I wouldn't follow. Adrian's expression was dark. Apparently we thought wrong. You think he's been here, in the city, this whole time? I think he's been somewhere close enough to watch, to wait, to plan. Adrian pulled up another image, a surveillance photo of a man in his late 30s, well-dressed, ordinary-looking except for the cold intelligence in his eyes. This was taken 6 months ago outside a restaurant I own. We didn't think anything of it at the time, just another face in the crowd. But look at this. He zoomed in on this man's hand where a ring caught the light, the same symbol from the tattoo. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. He's been watching you. For how long, I don't know, but long enough to learn my patterns, my business, my associates. Adrian's jaw tightened. Long enough to learn about you. But how? We were careful. I disappeared completely. No one disappears completely. Not really. He pulled up more images, screenshots of what looked like financial records, phone logs, travel manifests. Your safe passage agency did a good job, but they're not infallible. A hospital record here, a credit card transaction there, enough breadcrumbs for someone patient enough to follow them. Elena's legs felt weak. She sank into one of the leather chairs. So, he knows about Noah, has known for years. The timing suggests yes. The question is, why wait until now to move? Maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe he needed time to build resources, plan, or maybe he wanted Noah old enough to remember. Adrian's voice was quiet, terrible. Old enough for the trauma to stick. Old enough that taking him would destroy me completely. The implication hit Elena like a physical blow. You think he wants to take Noah? I think he wants to hurt me in the most devastating way possible. And the best way to hurt me is through my son. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing despite the robe. So what do we do? We don't do anything. You stay here with Noah where you're protected. I handle Mikhail. Handle him how? Adrian's expression answered the question before his words did. However I need to. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. He moved around the desk, and Elena saw the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. He hadn't slept, she realized, had probably been up all night coordinating whatever resources he'd mobilized. Elena, I need you to trust me. Just this once. Let me do what I should have done 15 years ago and end this permanently. By killing him. By making sure he can never threaten my family again. If that means killing him, then yes. Elena wanted to argue, to insist there had to be another way, but she looked at the evidence spread across Adrian's desk. The threats, the surveillance photos, the patient stalking that had led someone to her doorstep, and the words died in her throat. I don't want Noah to grow up knowing his father's a killer, she said finally. I'd rather he grow up at all. Adrian's voice was rough. I know what you think of me, of the choices I've made, and you're right to judge them, but everything I've ever done, every line I've crossed, has been to build something strong enough to protect the people I love. I failed you once by letting you walk away. I'm not failing Noah. You didn't let me walk away. I ran. Because I wasn't the kind of man you could stay with. He looked at her directly, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I knew it then, and I know it now. But whether you think I'm worthy or not doesn't change the fact that he's my son, and I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt him. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it was almost comforting, because whatever else Adrian Volkov was, he was a man who kept his promises. How long? She asked quietly. How long until you find Mikhail? We're close. The tattoo was a mistake on his part. Too distinctive, too traceable. My people are running down every known associate, every property, every shell company that might connect to him. Adrian checked his watch. I'm expecting a location within the next 6 hours. And then? And then I make sure he understands that threatening my family was the last mistake he'll ever make. Elena stood, needing to move, to do something with the nervous energy coursing through her. She crossed to the window, looking out at the pre-dawn city. Somewhere out there, Mikhail Konstantin was planning his next move. And somewhere in the master bedroom, Noah was sleeping peacefully, unaware that his existence had reignited a war 15 years in the making. I should have told you, she said quietly. When I found out I was pregnant, I should have trusted you enough to tell you. I wouldn't have let you leave. I know. And we would have fought about it. You would have wanted normal, safe, suburban. I would have insisted on security, control, everything you were trying to escape. I know that too. Adrian moved to stand beside her at the window. They stood there in silence, watching the city wake up, and for a moment Elena let herself imagine what might have been, if she'd stayed, if she'd trusted him with the truth, if they'd raised Noah together instead of apart. Would they have made it, or would the constant tension between her need for normalcy and his world of violence have torn them apart anyway? He deserves to know, Adrian said finally. About me, about who I am. He's 6 years old. I know, but he deserves the truth, even if it's a version simplified enough for him to understand. He looked at her. I'm not asking for immediate declarations or family photos, but I want him to know I'm his father, that I'm here because I choose to be, not because circumstances forced me. Elena's chest tightened. And after this is over? After Mikhail is dealt with and the threat is gone? That's up to you. Adrian's voice was careful, controlled. If you want to disappear again, I won't stop you. I'll make sure you have resources, protection, everything you need to stay safe. But I'm asking, not demanding, asking that you let me be part of his life. Whatever that looks like, whatever you're comfortable with. It was the most vulnerable she'd ever heard him. No commands, no assumptions of control, just a father asking for the chance to know his son. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I can ask. A soft sound from the doorway made them both turn. Noah stood there in his Spider-Man pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction, Mr. Bear dangling from one hand. Mom? His voice was small, uncertain. I woke up and you weren't there. Elena's heart cracked. She crossed to him immediately, kneeling to his level. I'm sorry, baby. I was just talking to Adrian. I didn't mean to scare you. I wasn't scared. but his hand found hers, holding tight. What are you talking about? Elena looked at Adrian, saw him watching Noah with such naked longing it hurt to witness. She made a decision that terrified her, but felt right despite the fear. Actually, sweetheart, we were talking about something important, something I should have told you a long time ago. She took a breath. Do you remember how you sometimes ask about your father? Noah's eyes went wide. He nodded slowly. Well, I need to tell you something about that. About him. She squeezed his hand gently. Your father didn't leave because he didn't want you. He left because I asked him to, because I thought it was safer for you. Safer from what? How did you explain danger to a 6-year-old without destroying his sense of security? From some bad people who wanted to hurt people your father cared about. So I took you away where they couldn't find us. Noah processed this, his young mind working through the implications. But they found us anyway. That's why we had to leave our apartment. Too smart. Her boy was too smart for his own good. Yes, Elena admitted. They found us anyway. But now your father is here, and he's going to make sure those bad people can't hurt us anymore. Noah looked past her to Adrian, studying him with intense focus. Are you my dad? The question hung in the air. Adrian crossed the room slowly, carefully, like Noah was a wild animal that might spook. He knelt down to meet Noah's eyes directly. Yes, Adrian said simply. I'm your father. Do you have a picture? Mom said she didn't have any pictures. I do. Would you like to see? Noah nodded. Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolling through images until he found what he was looking for. He turned the screen to show a photo of himself at maybe 25, younger and harder around the edges, but unmistakably the same man. Noah stared at the photo, then at Adrian, then back at the photo. We look the same. We do. You have your mother's smile, but you have my eyes. And my nose? That's mine too. What about my ears? Despite everything, Elena felt a laugh bubble up. Leave it to Noah to focus on anatomical inventory at a moment like this. Your ears are all your own, Adrian said, and there was warmth in his voice that Elena had rarely heard. Completely unique. Noah seemed satisfied with this assessment. Why didn't you come find us before? The question was innocent, but it cut deep. Adrian's expression flickered with pain before he controlled it. Because I didn't know where you were. Your mom was very good at hiding. She's good at lots of things. Noah's loyalty was absolute. She makes good pancakes, and she knows all the words to the songs I like, and she gives the best hugs. She does, doesn't she? Are you going to stay now? Or are you going to leave again? Elena held her breath, waiting for Adrian's answer. I'm going to stay, Adrian said firmly. For as long as you and your mom want me here. I promise you that. Noah considered this with his characteristic seriousness. Then he stepped forward and held out his hand. Okay, deal. Adrian looked at the small hand extended to him, and for a moment Elena saw his control crack. He took Noah's hand carefully, like it was made of glass. Deal, he said, his voice rough. They shook on it, solemn as a business contract. Then Noah yawned, remembering it was still dark outside. Can I go back to bed now? Of course, baby. Elena guided him back toward the master bedroom. Come on, let's get you settled. She tucked him back into the massive bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. Noah looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Mom? Is it okay that I have a dad now? The question broke her heart and mended it simultaneously. It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's wonderful. Good. Because I always wanted one. His eyes were already drifting closed. Like the other kids at school. Elena stayed with him until his breathing evened out, until she was sure he was truly asleep. When she returned to the office, Adrian was standing exactly where she'd left him, staring at his hand like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Thank you, he said quietly, for telling him, for letting me... His voice caught. Thank you. He deserved to know. He deserves so much more than what I can give him. Adrian's expression was bleak. A normal father, a safe life, summers at the beach, and baseball games, and parent-teacher conferences. Maybe. Elena moved closer. But he has you. And despite everything, despite my fears and my running, you're his father. That has to mean something. It means everything. Adrian looked at her directly, which is why I need to end this, permanently, before Mikhail makes his move. As if summoned by his name, Adrian's phone buzzed. He grabbed it, reading the message that appeared, and his expression turned to stone. What? Elena asked, fear spiking through her. They found him. Mikhail. He's been operating out of a warehouse in Red Hook. Adrian was already moving, grabbing a jacket from the closet. Victor's assembling the team now. You're going after him. I'm ending this. Adrian, wait. Elena caught his arm. What if it's a trap? What if he wants you to come to him? Then it's a trap I'm walking into with open eyes and superior firepower. He covered her hand with his. I need you to stay here with Noah. Dmitri and 2 others will remain on security. If anything happens, if anyone approaches who isn't one of my people, you take Noah to the panic room behind the bookshelf in my office, and you don't come out until I call the all clear. And if you don't call, I will. The certainty in his voice was absolute. I have too much to lose now. He pulled her close suddenly, and Elena let herself lean into him, breathing in the familiar scent of him. For just a moment, she let herself remember what it felt like to trust him completely. Be careful, she whispered. Always. He pulled back, started for the door, then stopped. Elena, if something does go wrong, it won't. But if it does, I need you to know something. He looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. I never stopped, not for 1 day, not for 1 hour. I never stopped loving you. Before she could respond, he was gone. Elena stood frozen in the office, his words echoing in her ears. Outside the windows, the sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Beautiful and terrible, like everything else about this impossible situation. She returned to the master bedroom, sliding back into bed beside Noah. He stirred slightly, curling toward her warmth, and she wrapped her arms around him. Somewhere across the city, Adrian was driving toward a confrontation 15 years in the making, and all Elena could do was wait. The hours crawled by. Noah woke properly around 8, hungry and still processing the revelation that the man who'd come into their lives yesterday was actually his father. Elena made him breakfast in Adrian's state-of-the-art kitchen, fumbling with appliances that probably cost more than her car. Dmitri maintained his position near the entrance, professional and silent. Another guard, she thought his name was Pavel, monitored the security feeds from Adrian's office. A third man she hadn't met patrolled the perimeter. It all felt surreal. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern had been whether Noah would finish his homework. Now she was in a penthouse fortress, waiting to find out if the father of her child would survive a gang war. Mom? Noah looked up from his cereal. Is Adrian coming back? Yes, baby. He just had some work to take care of. What kind of work? Important business stuff. Noah seemed to accept this, returning his attention to his breakfast, but Elena caught him glancing at the door periodically, checking to see if Adrian had returned. Her phone buzzed. Detective Morris. Need to check in. Are you and Noah safe? Elena typed back, yes, secure location. Any updates on the investigation? Following several leads. Need to interview you again soon. When can you meet? Not sure. We'll contact you when situation stabilizes. There was a long pause before the response came. Ms. Rivera, I need to be clear about something. If you're with Volkov and if he's planning to take matters into his own hands, you could be charged as an accessory. Think carefully about your next moves. Elena stared at the message, the implications settling like lead in her stomach. She was potentially making herself complicit in whatever Adrian was about to do. But what choice did she have? Let Noah remain vulnerable? Trust that the police could protect them from someone who'd been patient enough to stalk them for years? She turned off her phone without responding. The morning stretched into afternoon. Noah asked to watch TV, and Elena let him, anything to keep him occupied and calm. She tried to read, to focus on anything other than imagining what was happening in Red Hook. When her phone buzzed again, she nearly dropped it. But it wasn't Adrian. It was a number she didn't recognize. Miss Rivera. We should talk about your son, about his future. M.K. Elena's blood turned to ice. M.K. Mikhail Konstantin. He had her number. Her hands shaking, she showed the message to Dmitri. His expression darkened immediately. and he was on his radio within seconds, speaking rapid Russian. Another message appeared. Such a beautiful boy. Smart, too. I've been watching him walk to school every morning. He has his father's eyes. Elena felt bile rise in her throat. The question is, Ms. Rivera, does he have his father's capacity for violence? We'll find out soon enough. She was about to respond when Dmitri took the phone from her hands. Don't engage, he said firmly. He's trying to provoke a reaction. Boss needs to know about this immediately. Try calling Adrian. Already did. He's not answering. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. What do you mean he's not answering? His phone is either off or destroyed. Victor's isn't responding either. Dmitri's expression was grim. Which means they're either in the middle of the operation or what? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Another message appeared on her phone, still in Dmitri's hand. Don't worry, when I take the boy, I'll make sure Adrian is alive to watch. That's the whole point, after all. Not to kill what he loves, but to make him watch it die slowly. Elena's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter for support, her vision swimming. He's going to take Noah, she whispered. He's not going to do anything. Dmitri's voice was hard. Because he'd have to go through all of us first, and that's not happening. But even as he said it, the lights went out. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after a few seconds, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Mom? Noah's voice was scared. What's happening? Elena ran to him, pulling him close. It's okay, baby. Just a power outage. Dmitri was already moving, pulling a weapon from his jacket. Pavel, status report. No response. Pavel? Silence. Then, from somewhere in the penthouse, the sound of breaking glass. Dmitri grabbed Elena's arm. Panic room. Now. What about... Now! He practically dragged her toward Adrian's office. Noah clutched in her arms. Behind them, she heard footsteps. Voices. The sound of doors being kicked open. They made it to the office. Dmitri went straight to the bookshelf, pressing something that made it swing open to reveal a reinforced door behind. He punched in a code and the door hissed open. Inside. Don't come out for anyone except me or the boss. Dmitri? Go! Elena stumbled into the panic room, Noah crying against her shoulder. Dmitri slammed the door shut and she heard locks engaging. Heavy, mechanical, final. The room was small, maybe 8 by 10, lit by more emergency lighting. A bench along one wall. Shelves stocked with water and non-perishable food. A phone mounted to the wall, hardwired, she assumed, for exactly this kind of situation. Outside, she heard shouting, gunfire. The sounds of a fight Elena prayed Dmitri would win. Then silence. Terrible, absolute silence. Noah was sobbing now, terrified beyond words. Elena held him tight, her own fear threatening to overwhelm her. She reached for the phone with shaking hands. No dial tone. She tried again. Nothing. The line was dead, which meant they were alone. Trapped in a reinforced box while outside, someone hunted them. And somewhere across the city, if he was even still alive, Adrian had no idea his family was under attack. Elena counted her heartbeats in the darkness. 100, 200, each second stretching into eternity while Noah trembled against her chest, his sobs gradually quieting into hiccuping breaths. Shh, baby, she whispered, stroking his hair. We're safe in here. Nobody can get to us. But even as she said it, she heard sounds from outside the panic room. Footsteps. Methodical, unhurried. Someone was searching the penthouse room by room. Noah went rigid in her arms. Mom, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. I know. Elena pulled him closer, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. The phone was dead. The door was locked from the inside, but how long would it hold against someone determined to break through? And where the hell was Dmitri? The footsteps grew closer. Elena heard the office door open, heard someone moving through Adrian's space with casual confidence. Then a voice, muffled through the reinforced walls but still audible. Ms. Rivera, I know you're in there. The panic room behind the bookshelf. Very predictable. Adrian always did favor the obvious solutions dressed up as clever. Mikhail Konstantin. Speaking perfect English with just a trace of an accent. Elena's hand flew to Noah's mouth, keeping him silent. He understood. his small body going still. "I'm not here to hurt you," Mikhail continued, and Elena could hear him moving closer to the bookshelf. "Or the boy. Despite what you might think, I'm not a monster who kills children." Elena didn't believe him for a second. "I'm here to make Adrian Volkov understand what he took from me 15 years ago. My father, my legacy, my future. He walked into our territory and burned it all to the ground." There was a sound like someone running their hand along the bookshelf. "So I'm going to return the favor. I'm going to take his son. Not to kill him. No, that would be too quick, too merciful. I'm going to raise him as my own. Teach him who his father really is. What kind of man builds an empire on the corpses of other people's families?" Noah whimpered against Elena's palm. She held him tighter, her own fear threatening to choke her. "You have a choice, Ms. Rivera," Mikhail said. "You can stay in there until my people cut through this door, and they will, eventually. All that reinforced steel just buys you time, not safety. Or you can come out now, and we can handle this like civilized people." Elena's eyes had adjusted to the dim emergency lighting. She scanned the panic room desperately, looking for anything that could help. The shelves held water, food, basic first aid supplies. No weapons. No way to communicate with the outside world. She was trapped. Then she noticed something she'd missed in her initial panic. A small grate near the floor, probably part of the ventilation system. Too small for her to fit through, but Noah... No. She couldn't. Wouldn't risk sending her son crawling through air ducts while armed men hunted them. "I'm going to count to 10, Mikhail said, his voice carrying a note of patience running thin. "If you don't open this door, I'm going to assume you've chosen the hard way. And Ms. Rivera, I should tell you, the hard way involves cutting power to the ventilation system. That room is airtight by design. You'll run out of breathable air in about 6 hours. The boy will go first. Children always do." The threat was delivered with such casual cruelty that Elena felt rage override her fear. She looked down at Noah, saw his terrified eyes watching her, trusting her to fix this. She'd spent 6 years running, hiding, building walls between them and danger. And it had all led to this moment, trapped in a box while a madman threatened to suffocate her son. No more running. Elena set Noah carefully on the bench. "Baby, listen to me very carefully. I need you to be the bravest you've ever been. Can you do that?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'm going to talk to the man outside. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, you stay quiet, you stay hidden. And if anyone except me or Adrian comes through that door, you scream as loud as you can, understand?" "Mom, no!" "Promise me, Noah." His voice was barely a whisper. "I promise." Elena kissed his forehead, breathing in the scent of him, memorizing it in case this was the last time. Then she stood and moved to the door. "I'm opening the door," she called out. "I'm unarmed. I'm coming out." "Excellent choice." Mikhail sounded pleased. "Hands where I can see them." Elena's hands shook as she entered the unlock code. The door hissed open, and she stepped out into the red emergency lighting of Adrian's office, hands raised. Mikhail Konstantin stood by the desk, and he looked nothing like the monster she'd imagined. Mid-30s, well-dressed in an expensive suit, attractive in a cold way. He could have been a banker or a lawyer or any other professional, except for his eyes. Those held the kind of emptiness that came from years of nursing hatred. 2 men flanked him, both armed. Elena recognized neither of them. "Where's Dmitri?" she asked. "Your bodyguard?" Mikhail smiled. "Alive. Unconscious, but alive. I told you, I'm not here to kill unnecessarily, just to take what belongs to me now." "Noah doesn't belong to you." "No, but he will. By the time I'm done, he'll understand that his father is a murderer who destroyed innocent families. He'll hate Adrian as much as I do." Mikhail took a step closer. "Where is the boy?" "Gone." "Really?" He didn't believe her. "You opened that panic room with no negotiation, no demands for safety? You expect me to believe you'd leave your son behind?" "I expect you to believe I'm his mother, and I'd do anything to protect him." Elena's voice was steady, despite the terror coursing through her. "Including sacrificing myself to buy him time." Mikhail studied her face, then nodded to one of his men. "Check the panic room." The man moved toward the still open door. Elena held her breath, praying Noah had understood, that he was hidden, that he'd stay quiet. The man disappeared inside. Seconds ticked by like hours. "Boss, he's not here." Mikhail's expression darkened. "Then where—" The elevator dinged. Everyone froze. The doors slid open, and Adrian Volkov stepped into the penthouse. He looked like he'd walked through hell. His shirt was torn, blood stained his jacket, and there was a cut above his left eye. But he was alive, and the fury in his expression was terrifying to witness. Victor emerged behind him, equally battered, weapon drawn. Adrian's eyes found Elena first, scanning her for injuries, then swept the room, taking in Mikhail and his men in one comprehensive glance. "Interesting," Mikhail said, recovering his composure. "I was told you were dead, or at least occupied with the team I sent to Red Hook." "Your team is in police custody." Adrian's voice was ice. "Your warehouse is burning, and you're about to learn why people stopped saying the Constantine name without fear attached to it." Big words from a man outnumbered in his own home. "Am I?" Adrian smiled, and it was predatory. "Victor, how many men do we have in the building?" 12, boss. 4 in the stairwells, 4 on the roof, 4 securing the lobby. "And outside?" 20, plus the police detective you called for backup. Mikhail's confidence flickered. "You're bluffing. Call my bluff then. Tell your men to shoot. See how far you get before my people turn this penthouse into a kill box." Adrian took a step forward. "Or you can accept that you've lost and walk away with your life." "Walk away?" Mikhail laughed, but it sounded forced. "After 15 years of planning, after watching you build your empire on the ashes of my father's legacy? Your father was a monster who killed innocent people for profit. I did the city a favor. You did yourself a favor." Mikhail's control was cracking. "You wanted power, territory, respect. Don't pretend it was about justice." "I never pretended anything. I wanted all of that, and I took it." Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. "But I never targeted children, never threatened families. Your father crossed lines that made him a target, and I removed him. Clean, surgical. He didn't suffer. He died in the gutter like a dog. He died like a man who made enemies he couldn't handle." Adrian glanced at Elena, making sure she was still unharmed, then returned his attention to Mikhail. "You want revenge? Fine. Take it out on me. But the moment you involved my son, you made this personal in a way you can't survive." "Your son?" Mikhail spat the words. "The bastard child you didn't even know existed until yesterday. Don't pretend you care about him." "I care about him more than you can possibly understand, which is why I'm going to give you one chance to walk out of here alive." Adrian's hand moved to his waistband, pulling out a weapon. "Leave now! Leave the city! Leave the country! Disappear so completely that I never hear your name again. Or stay, and I promise you, you won't see sunrise." The two men faced each other across the office, the weight of 15 years of hatred hanging between them. Elena could see Mikhail calculating, weighing his options. Then his eyes shifted to her, and she saw his decision crystallize. "No," Mikhail said. "I think I'll take her instead." He moved fast, faster than Elena expected. His hand locked around her arm, yanking her against him, and suddenly there was a gun pressed to her temple. Adrian's weapon came up instantly, but Mikhail was already backing toward the elevator, using Elena as a shield. "Let her go," Adrian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I don't think so. She's my insurance now." Mikhail dragged Elena backward. "Tell your men to stand down, or I paint your office with her brains." Elena felt the cold metal against her skin, felt Mikhail's heartbeat racing against her back. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She was furious. 6 years of running, 6 years of fear. And it all came down to this: being used as a pawn in someone else's war. No more. Elena went suddenly limp, her full weight dropping in Mikhail's grip. The unexpected move threw him off balance, and his gun shifted away from her head for just a second. It was all the opening Adrian needed. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Mikhail jerked backward, the gun falling from his hand. Elena scrambled away as he collapsed, clutching his shoulder where Adrian's bullet had struck. Mikhail's men raised their weapons, but Victor was faster. 2 shots, perfectly placed, and both men were down before they could fire. Adrian crossed to Mikhail in 3 strides, kicking the fallen gun away, his own weapon trained on the wounded man's head. "You should have walked away," Adrian said quietly. Elena pulled herself up, her ears ringing from the gunshots. She looked at Mikhail bleeding on the floor, at Adrian standing over him with cold judgment, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was who Adrian was, who he'd always been, a man capable of violence when necessary, delivered with surgical precision, and she couldn't deny anymore that part of her was grateful for it. "Adrian," her voice cut through the tension. "Noah, he's in the panic room." Adrian's head snapped toward her, all the coldness evaporating into pure fear. "Is he hurt?" "No, just scared. I told him to hide." He was moving before she finished speaking, holstering his weapon and disappearing into the panic room. Elena heard his voice, gentle and reassuring, coaxing Noah out of whatever hiding place he'd found. When they emerged, Noah was in Adrian's arms, face buried against his father's shoulder, small body shaking with residual terror. The sight of them together, her son and this dangerous man who'd proven today just how far he'd go to protect his family, made Elena's eyes burn with tears. Adrian carried Noah to where Elena stood, and the 3 of them came together in a way that felt inevitable, like this was always how it was supposed to be. The police arrived minutes later, led by Detective Morris, with a squad of officers who swept through the penthouse with professional efficiency. Mikhail and his men were taken into custody, paramedics treating Mikhail's shoulder wound before transporting him under armed guard. Morris took statements from everyone, her expression grave as she listened to Adrian's carefully edited version of events. Self-defense, protection of family, all technically true, even if the full story was considerably more complicated. "This is going to be a bureaucratic nightmare," Morris said, closing her notebook. "But given the circumstances, I don't see charges being filed against anyone except Konstantin and his associates." "What will happen to him?" Elena asked. "Attempted kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, breaking and entering." Morris counted on her fingers. "He'll be lucky to see daylight again before he's 50. And that's if federal prosecutors don't pick up the case for organized crime connections. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Elena just felt exhausted. The hours that followed blurred together. Dmitri was found unconscious in the hallway, taken to the hospital with a concussion, but expected to recover fully. Pavel and the 3rd guard had both been overpowered and restrained, alive but injured. The building's security had been compromised by someone on Mikhail's payroll, someone who'd be facing their own charges. By the time the police finished processing the scene, it was late afternoon. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, finally succumbing to emotional exhaustion. Adrian sat beside him, one hand resting protectively on his son's back, as if reassuring himself Noah was real and safe. Elena watched them from across the room, her mind trying to process everything that had happened in the past 36 hours. Her entire world had been turned upside down, shaken apart, and reassembled into something she didn't quite recognize. "You should rest," Adrian said quietly, not looking away from Noah. "There's a guest room made up." "I'm not tired." "You're exhausted. I can see it from here." Elena crossed to them, sinking into the chair opposite the couch. "What happens now?" "Now?" Adrian finally looked at her. "Now you decide what you want, what you need, what's best for Noah. And you'll just accept whatever I decide?" "I'll accept that you know our son better than I do, that you've been making decisions for his welfare for 6 years, and you've done a remarkable job." Adrian's expression was open, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. "I meant what I said before. I won't stop you if you want to leave, but I'm asking you to stay." "In the penthouse?" "In the city. In his life. In—" He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "Just stay. Please." Elena looked at Noah sleeping peacefully despite everything, then at Adrian watching them both with such careful hope. "I can't promise you a relationship," she said carefully. "I can't promise we'll be a family in any traditional sense. I'm not asking for promises. But I can promise that I won't keep him from you anymore. That you'll be part of his life." She took a breath. "That we'll figure this out together." Adrian's expression cracked, relief and something deeper flooding through. "That's all I want, all I've ever wanted. There will be rules, boundaries, things I'm not comfortable with. Whatever you need, name it. No violence around Noah. I don't care what business you're in or what conflicts arise, he doesn't see that side of your life. Adrian nodded. Agreed. And I want him in normal activities. School, sports, whatever he's interested in, not isolated in some fortress. We'll make it work. Security can be invisible. And therapy. Elena's voice was firm. For all of us. After what he's been through today, he's going to need help processing it. I'll have someone recommended by tomorrow. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the agreement settling between them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to what either of them might have wanted in an ideal world. But it was real, and it was possible, and it was more than Elena had thought she'd have 24 hours ago. Can I ask you something? Adrian's voice was quiet. Why did you really leave 6 years ago? The truth, not the version you've been telling yourself. Elena considered lying, deflecting, but they were past that now. Because I was terrified of how much I loved you, she admitted. Because loving you meant accepting a life I didn't know how to navigate. And when I found out I was pregnant, I realized I'd have to choose between the man I loved and the life I needed to give our child. So I chose Noah. And I've spent 6 years wondering if I made the right decision. Did you? I don't know. She looked at him directly. Ask me again in another 6 years. Adrian smiled, and it was real, reaching his eyes in a way that made him look younger. I can work with that timeline. Noah stirred, waking gradually. He blinked up at them both, momentarily confused, then seemed to remember where he was. His hand reached for Elena's. Mom, are the bad people gone? They're gone, baby. The police took them away. Are they coming back? No, Adrian said firmly. They're never coming back. I promise you that. Noah seemed to accept this. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. I'm hungry. Despite everything, Elena laughed. Of course you are. Can we order pizza? Noah looked between them hopefully. All three of us? It was such a normal request, such a mundane thing to ask for after the chaos of the day. But maybe that was exactly what they needed, a return to normal, or at least to something that resembled it. We can definitely order pizza, Adrian said. What kind do you like? Pepperoni, with extra cheese. Excellent choice, that's my favorite too. Really? Noah's face lit up. Mom likes mushrooms, it's weird. Very weird, Adrian agreed solemnly. But we can get half and half. They ordered the pizza. While they waited, Noah asked Adrian questions, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. What kind of car did he drive? Did he like video games? Could he skateboard? Adrian answered each question with patience Elena had never seen from him, clearly cherishing every detail he was learning about his son. When the pizza arrived, they ate together in the dining room, the massive table making them look small and temporary. But Noah chattered happily about school and his friends and the dragon books he was reading, and for a few hours, they could almost pretend they were just a normal family having dinner. After Noah was put to bed, in the master bedroom with Elena, with Adrian promising to check on him before he went to sleep, Elena and Adrian found themselves alone in the living room. The city sparkled beyond the windows, oblivious to the drama that had played out in the penthouse hours earlier. I need to tell you something, Adrian said, his expression serious. About Mikhail. Elena's stomach tightened. What about him? The warehouse in Red Hook. It wasn't just a base of operations. He had files, years of surveillance on you, on Noah, photos, schedules, everything. Adrian's jaw was tight. He's been watching since before Noah was born. The threats you received 6 years ago, those were from him. He was trying to draw me out to make me show my hand. When I didn't, when you disappeared, he shifted strategies, started playing the long game. How long? Best we can tell? From the moment he found out you existed, that you were important to me. Adrian met her eyes. I'm sorry. If I'd known, if I'd suspected for even a moment that someone was targeting you, you would have done what? Locked me up? Surrounded me with guards? Elena shook her head. I left because I didn't want that life, Adrian. I wanted freedom, even if it came with risk. And now? Now I know that freedom was an illusion, that running doesn't solve problems. It just delays them. She moved to stand beside him at the window. Now I know that sometimes the safest place is beside the person everyone's afraid of. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and Elena saw the question forming before he asked it. Does this mean you're staying? Really staying? I'm staying in the city. I'm letting you be part of Noah's life. Beyond that, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Let's take it one day at a time. We've got 6 years of distance to bridge. That doesn't happen overnight. I can do one day at a time. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. I can do whatever you need. They stood together in silence, watching the city lights, and Elena let herself imagine what the future might look like. Not perfect, probably never perfect, but real, honest, built on truth instead of secrets. The next morning, Elena woke to find Noah already up, sitting at the dining table with Adrian. They were working on something together. She could see papers spread out, Noah's tongue sticking out in concentration the way it always did when he was focused. What's this? She asked, moving closer. Adrian's teaching me chess, Noah announced proudly. I already know how the pieces move. Elena looked at Adrian, who had the grace to appear slightly sheepish. He asked what I liked to do. Chess seemed safer than most of my actual hobbies. Smart choice. Elena poured herself coffee from the pot Adrian had already made. How's he doing? Natural talent, already thinking 2 moves ahead. That's my boy. They spent the morning in the penthouse, letting Noah adjust to the new normal. Adrian made phone calls, coordinating repairs to the damaged security systems, and checking in with Dimitri at the hospital. Elena contacted the school to arrange for Noah's homework to be sent over, explaining vaguely about a family emergency. By afternoon, Elena knew they needed to make a decision about the immediate future. We can't stay here forever, she said to Adrian while Noah was watching cartoons. He needs routine, structure. I know. I've been thinking about that. Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her listings. There's a townhouse 3 blocks from Riverside Elementary, gated community, excellent security, but it looks normal from the outside. 3 bedrooms, a yard. It could work. Elena stared at the photos. You want to buy a house? I want to give Noah stability, a home, a place that's his. Adrian's expression was uncertain. But only if you're comfortable with it. This is moving fast. I know, but after yesterday I realized Noah deserves better than living in a fortress or a temporary apartment. He deserves a home, and I want to give him that. He paused. I want to give you both that. Elena thought about her old apartment with its creaking radiator and peeling paint. Thought about Noah asking when they'd stop running. Thought about the possibility of something permanent, something safe. Can we see it? She asked. They drove to the townhouse that afternoon, all 3 of them. The neighborhood was beautiful. Tree-lined streets, kids playing in yards, the kind of place Elena had always imagined living but never thought she could afford. The townhouse itself was perfect, modern but warm, with a kitchen that opened to a living room, bedrooms that were sized for actual humans instead of visiting royalty. And the yard, small but private, with room for Noah to play. What do you think? Adrian asked as Noah explored upstairs. I think it's too much. It's not too much. It's what you deserve. Adrian, I can't let you just buy us a house. It's not charity. It's providing for my son, our son. He took her hand carefully, testing to see if she'd pull away. She didn't. Let me do this. Please. Let me give him the childhood he should have had all along. Elena looked around the empty living room, imagining Noah's toys scattered across the floor, imagining homework at the kitchen table, imagining something that looked like a real life. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Noah's delighted shout came from upstairs. Mom, this room has a window seat. Can this be my room? Elena looked at Adrian, saw hope and fear and desperate love written across his face, and felt something in her chest finally loosen. Maybe they couldn't have what they'd once wanted. Maybe too much had happened. Too many years had passed. But they could have this, a home for their son, a chance to build something new from the wreckage of what they'd lost. It was a start. The paperwork was finalized within a week. Adrian's lawyers handled everything with efficiency that suggested they were used to making impossible things happen quickly. Elena packed up what little they had from the old apartment, donated most of it, started fresh. Noah started back at school, this time with invisible security that Adrian swore the boy would never notice. Teachers were briefed on a version of events that emphasized safety without revealing too much. Detective Morris closed her investigation with Mikhail and his associates, facing enough charges to ensure they'd never be a threat again. And slowly, carefully, They began to build a life. Adrian didn't move into the townhouse. That would have been too much too fast. But he was there most evenings. He learned Noah's homework routine, his favorite snacks, the particular way he liked his bedtime stories read. He showed up for the small moments that mattered, proving with action that he meant every promise he'd made. Elena watched them together and felt the walls she'd built begin to crumble. Not quickly, not completely. But piece by piece, day by day, she let herself believe that maybe this could work. 3 months after the attack, Elena stood in the kitchen of the townhouse making dinner while Noah and Adrian played chess in the living room. It was an ordinary evening, unremarkable in every way except that it existed at all. Adrian looked up and caught her watching. He smiled, and it was soft and genuine and filled with everything they'd never said out loud. Elena smiled back. Maybe love didn't always look like she'd thought it would. Maybe family came in forms she'd never expected. Maybe safety wasn't about hiding from danger, but about having someone willing to fight for you when it found you anyway. Maybe this, imperfect and complicated and built from the ruins of what they'd once lost, was exactly what they'd needed all along. That night, after Noah was asleep, after Adrian had checked on him one last time and was preparing to leave for his own apartment, Elena caught his arm at the door. "Stay," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her, surprise and hope warring in his expression. "Elena, just tonight, just stay." So he did. And when Elena woke the next morning to find Adrian and Noah making breakfast together, Noah chattering about a project for school while Adrian listened with complete attention, she knew they were going to be okay. Not perfect, not without challenges, but together. Finally, impossibly, together. 6 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Elena stood at the gate of Riverside Elementary and watched Noah run to meet his friends. He turned back once, waving at both her and Adrian standing side by side, then disappeared through the doors. "First baseball game is next week," Adrian said. "I cleared my schedule." "You don't have to come to everything." "I want to come to everything. I've got 6 years to make up for." Elena leaned against him slightly, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. It felt natural now, this closeness they'd rebuilt molecule by molecule. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up, for finding us, for proving that people can change." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "You gave me a reason to change. That makes all the difference." They walked back to the townhouse together, hands linked, and Elena realized she'd stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, stopped running. Because she'd finally found what she'd been looking for all along. Not safety through distance, but safety through connection. Not protection through walls, but protection through love fierce enough to fight for what mattered. She'd built a life worth staying for. And Noah, brilliant, brave, beautiful Noah, had a father who showed up, who kept promises, who loved him enough to become the kind of man worthy of that love. It wasn't the ending Elena had imagined 6 years ago when she'd fled into the night with a secret growing inside her. It was better, because it was real. It was earned, and it was theirs. The gate where fear had once returned had become the place where, every morning, Elena stopped running and started living instead. And that made all the difference.